Anya Sharma, 26, adjusted the lens on her old digital camera, a worn companion through years of scraping by as a freelance photojournalist. Her assignment: cover the annual Future Earth Summit at the exclusive Viridian Sanctuary, a renowned eco-resort nestled deep within the Red Leaf Mountains. The sanctuary was the brainchild of Julian Thorne, a charismatic tech billionaire hailed as a pioneer in sustainable development and environmental conservation. Anya, always a skeptic, hoped to find a nuanced story beyond the glossy corporate press releases. Her own life had been anything but glossy. Raised in a string of foster homes after her parents supposedly died in an unspecified mountain accident when she was 4, she carried a vague sense of a lost past and a burning desire for authentic narratives. Today, however, her focus was on the vibrant keynote speech Julian Thorne was delivering. He stood on a stage framed by cascading indoor waterfalls and lush vertical gardens, his silver hair impeccable, his voice resonating with passion as he spoke of reconnecting with nature and restoring our planet's sacred balance. Anya snapped photos, feeling a familiar dissonance between the grand words and the subtle, underlying tension she perceived in the forced smiles of some of the staff. Later, attempting to capture a unique angle of the summit's extravagant, plant-filled reception hall, Anya found herself navigating a labyrinth of service corridors. She mistook a discreet, unmarked door for a shortcut back to the main area. Instead, she stepped into a dimly lit private wing, clearly not meant for guests or junior press. It was a study impeccably furnished, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a grand desk. But what truly stopped her was a small display shelf near the window, bathed in a shaft of late afternoon sun. On the shelf sat a collection of indigenous artifacts, and amidst them a small, meticulously carved wooden owl. Anya's breath caught. It was her owl, the one her mother had carved for her before the accident. She remembered tracing the intricate patterns, the smooth grain of the wood. A tiny crescent-shaped burn mark, made by her own clumsy toddler fingers with a forgotten matchstick, was still faintly visible on its left wing. Her vision blurred. Beside the owl was a framed, slightly faded photograph. A little girl, perhaps 4 years old, beaming shyly, clutching the wooden owl. The girl had a distinctive, irregularly shaped birthmark, a small splash of lighter skin, just above her left eyebrow. Anya's trembling fingers automatically reached up, touching the corresponding spot on her own forehead. "My God, it's me." The words echoed silently in her mind, a whisper she didn't dare vocalize. How could her childhood toy and a photo of her younger self be displayed as a precious relic in Julian Thorne's private sanctuary? Her heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Just then a deep, authoritative voice cut through her daze. "Hey, this area is restricted." Julian Thorne himself stood in the doorway, his charismatic smile replaced by a cold, assessing gaze. Journalists are confined to designated zones. "My apologies, Mr. Thorne," Anya stammered, forcing a professional demeanor. "I must have gotten lost looking for the botanical garden." She clutched her camera tighter, her mind racing. Thorne merely gave her a dismissive nod, a gesture that conveyed she was utterly insignificant. A security guard, already alerted, escorted her swiftly back to the main halls. But the seed was planted. Anya returned to the summit, mechanically snapping photos, but her mind was elsewhere. Her eyes sought out Julian Thorne. He was on stage again, accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award, praising the dedication of environmentalists, his voice filled with practiced emotion as he spoke of the profound loss of those who paved the way, like my beloved late wife, Dr. Lena Petrova, whose vision inspired this very sanctuary. The irony tasted like ash in Anya's mouth. Her mission had abruptly changed. She was no longer just seeking a story. She was hunting for a truth she instinctively knew was buried deep within the verdant facade of the Viridian Sanctuary. The image of the wooden owl and her own childhood photograph burned behind Anya's eyelids. Sleep offered no escape. Her dreams were a confusing montage of her mother's elusive face, the scent of pine, and the unsettling glint in Julian Thorne's eyes. The carefully constructed narrative of her past, parents dead in an accident, documents lost, now felt flimsy, a stage curtain barely concealing a darker drama. She knew she couldn't confront Thorne directly. His dismissive glance had made it clear she was invisible, a nobody. But invisibility had its advantages. Over the next few days, Anya lingered at the Viridian Sanctuary, using her press pass as an excuse to explore. She began to subtly probe the resort's long-term staff, pretending casual curiosity about the sanctuary's history. Most offered the usual PR-approved anecdotes. Then she found Elias Vance. Elias was the sanctuary's head groundskeeper, a man whose face was a roadmap of sun-baked wrinkles, his hands gnarled from decades of working the soil. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace, tending to the ancient trees that predated Thorne's empire. He was gruff, initially resistant to small talk, but Anya noticed a quiet sadness in his eyes that resonated with her own unspoken grief. These old oaks, Anya began one morning, leaning against a majestic redwood Elias was pruning. They must have seen a lot of history here. Elias grunted, his shears clipping. More than Thorne wants people to know. His voice was raspy, laced with a bitterness that intrigued Anya. She pressed gently. I heard a bit about Dr. Lena Petrova, Mr. Thorne's first wife. She sounds like she was quite remarkable. Elias paused, his eyes fixed on a distant peak. Lena, she was the real heart of this place, a true botanist. She saw the soul of the forest, not just the timber. He looked at Anya, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. She carved that little owl, you know, for her daughter. A precious thing. Anya's heart leaped. She did? What happened to her daughter? She asked, trying to keep her voice even. Elias sighed, a sound heavy with regret. Disappeared. Right after Lena, right after the accident. For years old, she was just gone, like smoke. He lowered his voice, glancing around. Rumors, you know? Always rumors when rich folk get too rich too fast. Anya feigned ignorance. Rumors? Lena was asking too many questions, Elias whispered, almost to himself. About the land deals, the eco-friendly mining operations. Said Thorne was using the sanctuary as a front for something dirty. 2 weeks later, she's dead, and her daughter vanishes. He shook his head. And then Thorne inherited all that Petrova family money. Suddenly a philanthropist, building this whole empire on her vision, her name. Anya felt a chill crawl down her spine. The wooden owl, the photo, the age of the lost child matching her own age when orphaned. Elias's word began to weave a terrifying tapestry of betrayal. She spent the rest of the day in her motel room, fueled by cheap coffee, creating burner social media accounts and diving into online archives. She found articles about Lena Petrova, a brilliant ecologist, a fierce advocate for indigenous land rights, a whistleblower who openly criticized corporate greenwashing. The last article, published just weeks before her death, hinted at an imminent exposure of fraudulent environmental practices within a major conglomerate. Anya cross-referenced this with articles about Thorne's sudden rise to prominence, his acquisition of Lena's family trust, and the establishment of the Viridian Sanctuary. The dates, the timelines, the convenient confluence of tragedy and fortune. It was too perfect, too symmetrical. The pieces of a fragmented past were beginning to align into a chilling narrative, one where she wasn't just an orphan, but a forgotten victim, a loose and deliberately severed from a dark family tree. She knew she couldn't proceed alone. She needed an expert, someone who knew how to dig beneath the polished surface of corporate lies. Anya knew exactly who to turn to. Eleanor Hayes, a name synonymous with investigative journalism, a legend who had brought down corrupt politicians and exposed corporate malfeasance in her prime. Now retired, Eleanor ran a small, independent online news collective, Truth Weavers, from a cluttered, book-lined office in a nondescript Chicago building. Anya had followed her work for years, admiring her relentless pursuit of facts. "So, you're the young journalist who's been sending me cryptic emails about wooden owls and environmental billionaires," Eleanor said, her voice gravelly, her eyes sharp and assessing over the rim of her reading glasses. She was a formidable woman, with a shock of silver hair and an air of knowing exactly what battles were worth fighting. Anya placed a discreet photo of the owl and her childhood self on Eleanor's desk. "My mother carved that owl. That's me in the picture. It's hanging in Julian Thorne's private study at the Viridian Sanctuary." She recounted Elias Vance's whispers, the unsettling timeline, her own vague memories of a past that didn't fit the official narrative. Eleanor listened intently, a faint smile playing on her lips. "This isn't a family reunion story, is it, Anya? This smells like a classic corporate cover-up, cloaked in environmental virtue." She leaned back, tapping a pen against her chin. "Lena Petrova. I remember her. A firebrand. Too smart, too ethical for Thorne's world. Her accident always felt a little too neat. I can't afford your rates," Anya admitted, "but I'm a good photographer, a tenacious researcher. I'll work for free. I need answers. For my mother, for the girl in that photo." Eleanor studied Anya's face for a long moment. "All right, kid, I haven't had a case this juicy in years. But be warned, Julian Thorne doesn't play fair. He has tentacles everywhere. You're hunting a predator, not just a neglectful father." Their investigation began in earnest. Eleanor activated her dormant network of contacts: retired detectives, disgruntled former employees, underground activists. Anya, using her keen photographic eye and digital savvy, scoured databases, legal documents, and dark web forums. The layers of Thorne's deception slowly peeled away. They unearthed evidence that Lena Petrova, indeed, had hired a private investigator just weeks before her death, suspecting Thorne of illegal resource extraction and financial manipulation under the guise of the sanctuary's operations. This investigator, a man named Samuel Samriz, had also mysteriously disappeared shortly after Lena's accident. The most damning discoveries, however, revolved around Anya herself. Eleanor found forged death certificates, not just for Lena Petrova, but for a Jane Doe, female child, age 4, whose description vaguely matched Anya's. Julian Thorne had collected substantial life insurance payouts on both his deceased wife and lost daughter. The policies, particularly the one on the child, raised red flags. "He didn't just abandon you, Anya," Eleanor stated grimly, presenting the documents. "He declared you dead. He profited from your supposed demise." Anya felt a cold nausea clench her stomach. He'd built his empire on lies, on my mother's real vision, and on our fake deaths. Eleanor nodded. His entire image as a grieving widower, a philanthropic environmentalist, was a calculated facade. The Viridian Sanctuary itself, built on land acquired by exploiting vulnerable communities and concealing illegal mining operations beneath the protected forest. Your mother was on the verge of exposing it all. The truth was not just buried. It had been meticulously paved over with a verdant deception, and Anya realized she was not just seeking a father, but confronting a monster who had silenced her mother and erased her own existence for profit. The revelations hit Anya like a physical blow. Her mother, Lena, hadn't just died in an accident. She had been murdered. And Anya herself wasn't simply abandoned. She had been declared dead, a convenient ghost whose absence secured a fortune for Julian Thorne. The Viridian Sanctuary, a symbol of environmental integrity, was built on a foundation of ecological destruction and deceit. The betrayal was staggering, but it hardened Anya's resolve, transforming her initial shock into a cold, calculated fury. "There's more," Eleanor said, her voice grim, as she handed Anya a small, encrypted USB drive. "Remember Sam Reyes, Lena's private investigator? He was found, eventually, years later after his disappearance. He had left this behind, tucked away in a safe deposit box with instructions to release it if Thorne ever faced serious allegations." Anya inserted the drive into her laptop. A grainy video file appeared. It was footage from a hidden camera, dated 2 days after Lena's supposed accident. The setting was a small, clandestine clinic in a remote part of the Red Leaf Mountains, a property Eleanor had traced back to a shell company owned by Thorne. The footage showed Lena Petrova, conscious but barely, hooked up to IVs, speaking in a hoarse whisper to a frightened nurse. Julian poisoned me," Lena rasped, her eyes wide with fear. "He knows what I found. About the mines, the land, protect the girl. Anya, he'll come for her." The video ended abruptly as a man, his face obscured, entered the room, and the nurse visibly recoiled. Anya watched it twice, then a third time, tears streaming down her face. Her mother's final moments, not in a chaotic accident, but in a cold clinic, fighting to expose her killer and protect her child. The thought that Thorne had orchestrated Lena's death and then profited from it, while using her loss to burnish his image, was a grotesque masterpiece of villainy. He hadn't just gotten rid of an inconvenient wife and an unwanted daughter. He had converted their double murder into social capital and immense wealth. "He erased me," Anya whispered, her voice trembling. "He thought I was gone, buried with the lies." Eleanor placed a hand on Anya's shoulder. "That's his biggest mistake. He doesn't know you exist. That's your advantage, Anya. He underestimated you, just like he underestimated your mother." Anya wiped her tears, her gaze hardening. "He needs to pay, not just for Lena, but for every life he's crushed, every acre he's poisoned, every lie he's told." Their planning began, meticulous, relentless, and ruthlessly precise. Anya would use her access as a journalist, but this time not to report, but to expose. Eleanor leveraged her decades of experience, contacting trusted journalists at major news networks, discreetly sending them fragments of the evidence, priming them for the bombshell. They amassed a comprehensive dossier, forged death certificates, insurance payout records, the video of Lena's last words, financial ledgers detailing the illegal mining operations, and testimony from former employees who had been silenced. The stage for confrontation was chosen, the next Future Earth Awards gala at the Viridian Sanctuary, Thorne's annual crowning moment, where he would once again accept accolades for his supposed environmental stewardship. Anya would be there, not as a background photographer, but as the ghost returned, the truth made flesh. The silence of 22 years would be shattered, and Julian Thorne would finally face the daughter he thought he had buried forever. The grand ballroom of the Viridian Sanctuary shimmered under the exquisite chandeliers. The air buzzed with the champagne-fueled chatter of environmental luminaries, tech titans, and political figures, all gathered for the annual Future Earth Awards Gala. Julian Thorne, radiant in a tailored tuxedo, stood on stage, basking in the applause for his latest award, a gleaming trophy signifying his unwavering commitment to a greener future. "As someone who understands profound loss," Thorne intoned, his voice rich with practiced emotion, "the tragic passing of my brilliant wife, Lena, and our dear daughter inspired me to dedicate my life to protecting this precious planet. It's a legacy I strive to uphold every single day." The audience clapped, moved by his apparent sincerity. Anya, dressed in a sleek black photographer's uniform, moved through the room, her camera bag concealing a discreet microphone and a thick, damning envelope. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of 22 years of suppressed grief and righteous fury. Her gaze locked onto Thorne, his self-satisfied smile a mask she was about to tear away. As Thorne concluded his speech, Anya smoothly approached the stage, intercepting an assistant with the practiced ease of a seasoned journalist. "Excuse me, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice clear, amplified by the microphone she had swiftly taken. "A quick question, if I may, from an attendee deeply moved by your words." Thorne, caught off guard, forced a smile. "Of course, young lady, though I believe press interviews are scheduled for after the ceremony." His eyes narrowed, recognizing her as a journalist who had strayed into his private study weeks ago. "Indeed," Anya replied, stepping onto the stage, ignoring the murmurs rippling through the crowd. "But as someone whose life was also shaped by a lost daughter, your story resonates deeply. Can you elaborate on the circumstances of her disappearance? Because I have some very interesting details about her." Thorne's smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of irritation, then a dawning unease. "That's a personal tragedy, miss. I'd rather not delve into details." "A shame," Anya said, her voice growing colder, more powerful as she turned the audience. "Because I have those details, and they don't quite align with your narrative." She looked directly at Thorne, her gaze piercing. "First, your daughter didn't just disappear. You declared her dead to collect $500,000 in life insurance. Second, her mother, Dr. Lena Petrova, didn't die in an accident. She was poisoned, and she fought for her life. Try to warn a nurse about you." Gasps erupted from the audience. Thorne's face went ashen. He lunged for the microphone, but Anya deftly sidestepped him. "And third," she continued, her voice ringing with clarity, "that lost daughter, the one you erased, the one you used to fund your fake philanthropy, she's standing right here in front of you." Anya touched a distinctive birthmark above her left eyebrow. "Jasmine Helena Sharma. Or rather, Anya Lena Thorne, your daughter." Chaos erupted. Anya projected her childhood photo, holding the wooden owl onto the massive screen behind the stage. Beside it, the fake death certificates, the life insurance payouts, Lena's suppressed autopsy report confirming poisoning, and then the devastating video clip of Lena's final, whispered warning. That's slander," Thorne stammered, his impeccably tailored facade crumbling. "Absurd lies." "Is it?" Anya challenged, pulling out the thick envelope. "Then explain why I emailed every major news outlet in this room 5 minutes ago, a complete dossier. Authenticated documents, financial ledgers, and recordings of you admitting to your lawyer that Lena and I were problematic assets that needed to be dealt with." The room exploded. Cameras flashed wildly. Journalists, already primed by Eleanor Hayes' earlier tips, were scrambling, their phones pressed to their ears. Thorne looked around, seeing his empire disintegrate before his very eyes. You planned this," he whispered, finally comprehending the trap. "Of course I did," Anya replied, her voice unwavering. "You taught me that the truth, like nature, always finds a way to break through concrete. And Dad," she savored the word with icy contempt, 22 years is a long time to cultivate a harvest." The wail of sirens outside grew louder, cutting through the din of the room. Federal agents, alerted by Eleanor, streamed through the doors. Thorne, utterly defeated, watched this carefully constructed world collapse, arrested on stage for murder, fraud, and ecological crimes, as his dead daughter looked at it with the cold, clear eyes of a woman who had finally reclaimed her life. 6 months after Julian Thorne's spectacular fall, the Viridian Sanctuary was undergoing a profound metamorphosis. The opulent, greenwashed resort, once a monument to Thorne's deception, was now being painstakingly transformed. The gilded plaques were removed, the corporate branding stripped away, and in its place, a new name emerged, carved from reclaimed timber: the Dr. Lena Petrova Memorial Institute for Ecological Justice. Anya Sharma, no longer an invisible freelance journalist, sat in what was once Thorne's opulent office, now a buzzing center of genuine environmental research and advocacy, bearing the title of executive director. The FBI's investigation, fueled by Anya's meticulous evidence, had frozen all of Thorne's assets, revealing a vast network of illegal mining operations, illicit land acquisitions, and shell companies that had funneled billions into his private accounts, while a mere fraction was ever genuinely dedicated to environmental causes. The Institute was now funded by Thorne's confiscated fortune, fulfilling the promise of true environmental stewardship that he had so cynically exploited. "Ironic, isn't it?" remarked Eleanor Hayes, now Anya's trusted senior advisor, as she reviewed financial reports. "He built an empire on your mother's death and your supposed one, and now you're using his ill-gotten gains to truly realize her vision." Anya smiled. Signing a grant for a massive reforestation project in a deforested region Thorne had once exploited. The best kind of poetry, I think. He wanted to erase us. Instead, we're writing a new chapter with his pen. Anya's transformation had been public and profound. The story of the botanist's daughter had captivated the nation. She appeared on magazine covers, hailed as a heroine who had brought down one of the most powerful and duplicitous figures in environmental circles. Documentaries were in the works, detailing her incredible journey. Elias Vance, the gruff groundskeeper, now walked the Institute's restored grounds with a lighter step, sharing his vast knowledge of the local flora and fauna, genuinely proud of the work being done. More importantly, Anya had found her true family. During Eleanor's continued investigations into Thorne's network, they discovered that Lena Petrova had a twin sister, Dr. Sasha Petrova, a brilliant geneticist living in Europe. Sasha had searched for Anya for years after Lena's death, eventually giving up hope, convinced her niece had truly perished. Their reunion was emotional, a poignant echo of the family Anya had been robbed of. "You have her fire," Sasha had said, holding an old photograph of Lena, her eyes glistening. "Your mother would be so incredibly proud to see the woman you become, fighting for everything she believed in." Sasha became more than an aunt. She was a living link to Lena, a fount of stories and memories that filled the gaping void in Anya's past. Together, they curated Lena's journals and research, documenting her pioneering work in ecological preservation and her fierce activism. Meanwhile, news from the prison system painted a bleak picture for Julian Thorne. Sentenced to 30 years for murder, fraud, and environmental crimes, he had lost everything: his freedom, his vast fortune, and his carefully cultivated reputation. His former associates had distanced themselves. His Viridian brand was a global pariah, and his name, once synonymous with progress, was now a byword for corporate evil. Letters he tried to send Anya were intercepted by Eleanor, filled with self-pity and pleas for forgiveness. Anya tore them up without reading, knowing that forgiveness was a luxury Thorne hadn't earned. The true measure of her success, however, wasn't Thorne's downfall. It was in the letters from communities whose lands were being restored, from young ecologists receiving scholarships, from the vibrant, living ecosystem of the Institute that now truly honor her mother's legacy. The sun streamed through the expansive windows of the Lena Petrova Memorial Institute, illuminating Anya Sharma's office. On her desk, the small, hand-carved wooden owl stood sentinel, a silent testament to a journey from invisibility to powerful influence. She signed off on a proposal for a new community outreach program, a smile gracing her lips. Every decision, every project, resonated with a deeper purpose: to make real the change Julian Thorne had only ever pretended to champion. In a CNN interview, 6 months into her new role, Anderson Cooper asked Anya if she harbored anger towards her biological father. Anya paused, her gaze steady. Anger is a heavy burden, Mr. Cooper, she replied. Julian Thorne taught me, albeit unintentionally, the most profound lesson, that true power isn't about what you take, but what you build. He tried to erase my mother and me from history, but he only gave us a blank page to write our own, truer story. He created a tragedy for personal gain. I use that tragedy to create a legacy of healing and justice for thousands. The program showed breathtaking footage of the Institute's work, reclaimed land now teeming with native wildlife, indigenous communities partnering with scientists, young students engaged in hands-on conservation, all funded by the vast wealth Thorne had stolen. Anya's face, once haunted by a lost past, now radiated quiet strength and unwavering determination. That evening, Anya found herself at Lena's grave. The old, neglected headstone had been replaced by a beautiful, living monument of polished granite, etched with Lena's portrait and a powerful inscription. Dr. Lena Petrova, mother, scientist, guardian of the earth. She championed the voiceless. Her daughter completed the mission. Anya placed a bouquet of wildflowers, the same species her mother had loved, gently on the stone. We did it, Mom, she whispered, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. But it was a tear of gratitude, not grief. The justice you sought, the legacy you dreamed of, it lives. Through me.